So recently, I've finished or am almost finished with playing all of the Arkham series. Overall, I'm currently on Arkham Knight again, even though I've already finished that game a bunch of times already. I just wanted to play it all in order, and I've been having a blast. And today, I want to talk about why, in my opinion, I think the Arkham series was amazing overall. Don't get me wrong, there are a lot of problems, a few problems with each in their own game. Things like maybe with Arkham Asylum, how sort of clunky it was and kind of slow it was. I can't really blame it because it was the first game, but it was still amazing. Arkham City probably being one of the best ones or the best game in the series. Arkham Knight obviously having a lot of issues with like something like the Batmobile, but we're gonna get into that later. So today I'm going to be talking about why I like them so much, and we're going to be going in order. So today, or right now, we're going to be talking about Arkham Asylum, the very first one that came out in the PS3. At least that's where I played it, in the PS3. The game that was huge for me because the only other Batman game that I played is, I think, one from the PS2 a long time ago, or Lego Batman. And come on, that's not really like at least a game that's supposed to be taken seriously. So let's get into Arkham Asylum. So with Arkham Asylum, you can tell that this was the first Batman game of the Arkham series. I mean, it was kind of slow. Like, it did feel pretty slow moving around the place, and just the traversal, the movement, and everything was pretty slow. Having to move around the map was very annoying, at least, or sort of tedious, because sometimes there has to be specific paths that you have to go through to get to a place, the other side of the map, like go to the medical center or go to the botanical gardens. It was kind of annoying. And another thing is also the combat wasn't really that great in here because it just felt kind of slow. And in my opinion, every time I was using Batman and just like fighting enemies, it felt like I wasn't punching them. It felt like I was just slapping them. Like, just I kept slapping these guys in their faces, not actually punching them and knocking them down, which was kind of goofy. And I'm kind of glad that they also fixed that in the next games and actually improved on that. And another thing is, whenever you're doing a finisher or killing or knocking out the last person, it wasn't really that great. But with the other ones, it did sound a lot more dramatic, at least more of a punch, like an actual punch, and just knocking them out really hard, and just the dramatic effect or sound. You'll see. I'll show you later on of how it sounds right now. I'll just give you an example and how it sounds in the other games when it's their part. So as you can see, it's kind of weird. The audio with many things like punching and then breaking someone's bones didn't really feel real, but I can understand since it was the first game. One other thing that I also like that they did in this one was sometimes you would get these tapes that you can actually listen of the different criminals, like, bosses, of how they were, or like when they were getting, I don't know, like interviewed, or not really interviewed, but just talking with doctors on why they do stuff like this, what happened to them. It was very interesting hearing like Scarecrow, Killer Croc, Joker, Harley Quinn, many of these characters. It was very interesting to know how they got there and what's their mindset overall. Another thing that I think Arkham Asylum did really well with, that I can't really say with the other ones, is this one definitely felt more scary. Obviously, Batman, the Arkham series, is not supposed to be a scary game, but it does sometimes give you that scary environment, especially for a character that is based off of just fear, which is Scarecrow. And they did really good, in my opinion. They did really good with Scarecrow and showing that fear of Batman and all his trauma that he's dealt with ever since he was a kid, and even now with all the people that he's lost and just the things that's happened overall in his life and is still dealing with to this day, or at least from everything in this game. So they did really well, and when I was a kid, at least, it definitely creeped me out, all I'm trying to say. And especially with the boss fights, or just the fights with Scarecrow and trying to avoid his eyesight, was pretty crazy in my opinion. I never expected something like that for a Batman game ever. And I also liked it whenever they did these cool parts of showing like sort of flashbacks of Batman, like example, the infamous scene of Batman or Bruce Wayne witnessing his family, his parents, get killed in the alleyway. It was pretty crazy for me when I was a kid and I first started playing this. And it's still very, very cool to this day. I'm not saying that their death is cool and all, but it was very well done in my opinion. And with the other boss fights like Bane, I guess Joker you could say, Poison Ivy, they weren't really that great in my opinion. I think especially with Bane, because Bane is basically just a fight with the same concept of the Titan fights. The Titans of the big muscled up guys because of the Titan formula, where they're injected with the Titan formula. It's basically the same thing with the Bane fight, which kind of sucked. I kind of wish it was more than just that. And the Poison Ivy fight was kind of annoying for me, not only because the movement and everything and how stupid it was kind of was annoying, but not to mention that anything that you fucking did, especially when you blow her up or something like that, you throw a batarang at her, she moans so fucking loud, which is so annoying. And I'm grateful that I wear a headset whenever I'm playing a game, because it's definitely good to be safe and not be sorry for having to know that your family heard something like that and have to explain why they did that. So the Poison Ivy fight was kind of annoying. I didn't really like it that much. Sure, it was cool and all, I guess, but not really cool for me in my opinion. It was definitely a cool concept of everything, of Poison Ivy trying to kill you with this giant plant and just bringing up thorns to try to kill you. Definitely a cool thing. And then the Joker fight, it was okay. It kind of sucked because all you really have to do is just avoid his attacks. He runs away, fight a bunch of thugs. Then when you knock out all of those thugs, he gets distracted from the helicopter, and then you just pull him. He gets stuck because of his claws stuck on the floor, and just keep punching him for like 3 times maybe. Which sure is kind of cool, and I think that's kind of cool the way that they did Joker. A Titan Joker was kind of crazy. But other than that, it sort of like was kind of similar in some way, the same thing as like a Titan fight. But again, as I said, the movement wasn't really that great. I mean, I can't really blame it because it was the first one. So of course, it's kind of shit. The combat was kind of bad. I mean, even with the upgrades that you get, they weren't really fun or eye-catching. So there were a few glaring issues. But one thing that I think is still so good to this day and always gets me even now as an adult is the Killer Croc play, or at least the Killer Croc scene and everything that you have to do with the mission for going to Killer Croc's lair to get the spores. That thing still scares the shit out of me, or at least to some degree. Still is kind of scary in some way, and especially because of how sudden it is. Let me show you right here. I'll show you an example of how creepy it was for me back then, especially because I hated doing this mission as a kid. I never wanted to go back down there, but I would have to because I would keep replaying the game. And for me, when I finally played it again, it was still very tense for me to even play that. Believe it or not, you have to do this 5 fucking times. Trying to maneuver around the whole sewers, a fucking maze, while also trying to avoid Killer Croc in trying to kill you, obviously. Sometimes he spawns kind of far away from you and chases to you. And sometimes he spawns right in front of you, which always gets me, by the way, because why the fuck does he do that? So you have a split second to throw a batarang at him right in front of you, or else you're dead. And that's why I think they did really well with the Killer Croc gameplay and not like just some traditional boss fight. Because obviously Killer Croc is a giant fucking dude. He's fucking creepy as fuck. Obviously it's a crocodile, a giant crocodile as a guy. So it's pretty fucking creepy. And I think they did really well with this. Obviously you might say I'm being dramatic and it's not really scary if you think about it. Or in your opinion, if you think it's not scary, it's fine. I understand. But for me, when I was a kid, and even till now, at least I'm still a little creeped out and get creeped out and tensed up whenever I'm playing this part. I think they did really well with this. And it's probably, in my opinion, the most well-made thing they did from the whole story, in my opinion. They did really good, and I'm glad that they didn't do just like some other shitty boss fight that they did for this game. And I'm sorry if I'm being too harsh. I'm not saying that the other ones are terrible, but just kind of underwhelming in my opinion, especially because of how limited the gameplay or the combat was for most of these. So obviously they couldn't do too much. So I understand that. But other than that, they did really good with the Killer Croc gameplay, and I think it's probably my favorite part because it's pretty creepy and scary, and sometimes it can get you because of how quiet it is. All you're hearing is just Batman walking around, and also just water dripping. That's all you hear. It's just silence. And then Croc just comes out of nowhere and tries to kill you. So, in my opinion, they did really good with this. So, overall, I think for Arkham Asylum, with the whole story of Joker taking over the asylum and you having to stop Joker with all this formula shit, they did amazing with it, in my opinion. Sure, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of problems with Arkham Asylum because of how clunky and slow it can be, especially with maneuvering around the map. They did really good with this. So I think, in my opinion, Arkham Asylum is a good 7, 8 out of 10. Now we're moving on to Arkham City. Now, they definitely improved a lot of things in Arkham City. The combat was drastically improved, and thank God for that, because the movement, the combat in Arkham Asylum was kind of mediocre in my opinion. It really wasn't great, but I can't really blame them because it was the first one, so I'll give them some slack. Here, they definitely improved a lot with the combat, and it felt a lot more smoother to fight enemies than in Arkham Asylum, because of the different gadgets that you're able to use just in combat immediately is really good. And another thing with the movement, I would say it's definitely a little better than Arkham Asylum, but you still have the feel of Arkham Asylum of being pretty slow, because the one thing that was kind of annoying as well is the middle part of the map is restricted area. So even if you wanted to go from point A to point B, you have to go around the map to get there, not be able to just go across or go over the restricted area of the prison. You have to go all the way around because it won't let you, which is pretty annoying in my opinion. But other than that, I think they at least improved a little bit, especially with like maybe the grapnel boost, even though the grapnel boost wasn't even really that great in my opinion. It wasn't that much of a boost. But it was definitely an improvement considering Arkham Asylum because of how slow Arkham Asylum was, and you couldn't even really do that at all in there. Now, moving on to things like the main story and the bosses. The bosses were definitely really good. I think, in my opinion, the best bosses from the whole series, in my opinion, because even better than Arkham Knight, because Arkham Knight sort of felt a little repetitive or just not as eye-catching as Arkham City. They did really good with like Penguin and Solomon Grundy, with Ra's al Ghul. What else? How am I forgetting these? I guess you could say the Joker fight, Mr. Freeze, Clayface. I think they did really good with those, especially with Clayface. I didn't really expect Clayface to be a boss fight because I was always interested in his character and wondering how would his fight be if they actually had a boss fight, and they actually did that. I didn't really expect it because the only time I ever saw Clayface ever was in Lego Batman, which is just kind of funny. And Mr. Freeze, it was pretty good because it wasn't just a head-on, combat, just head-to-head 1v1 combat. It was actually you trying to think on how to counter and just get Freeze and try to knock him out without trying to go head-on-head, or head-on combat, sorry, because obviously he's too strong for that and he'll overpower you. So having to think of like what you could do, blow up a wall in his face, go under the gates and try to catch him by surprise, go on top of him and catch him by surprise, sneak up on him. They did really well, and especially with Mr. Freeze actually learning from his mistakes. And one example is if you try to sneak up behind him after like a second time, he leaves a trail that hurts you. So they did really good with that. Mr. Freeze was a really good thing. Now moving on to like the side quests, or maybe even the main story. The side quests, in my opinion, were good as well. I think obviously I don't think there was any side quests in Arkham Asylum, but I think maybe in some aspects, I think the side quests in here were a little better, or at least more interesting than in Arkham Knight. Because in Arkham Knight, some of them were just, oh, you having to go to a specific location and just knock out a bunch of Arkham Knight's thugs or whatever, his soldiers, and that's it. In here, at least it was sort of different in their own way. With Deadshot, with Zaz, with, I guess you could say, What other ones? Oh yeah, I guess trying to save Dr. Freeze's wife. There were many good things with Arkham City. Don't get me wrong. Feel free to let me know what you think was bad with Arkham City. I think, in my opinion, they did really good with the improvement of everything here, and especially with being able to play Catwoman. That was definitely an interesting sort of thing that you can do. Play Catwoman. I didn't really expect that. I don't know why, and it didn't even. You're not even really able to do that. At least not to the same thing as Arkham City to Arkham Knight. In Arkham Knight, you can only do like a DLC or something, which kind of sucks, but it's still cool. And in my opinion, the story was also really well made as well. From everything they did, like fighting Penguin, and also finding out what happened to Joker and how he's infected with being poison of the Titan, from like overdosing on it or something like that, and then Batman being infected with that. They did really good with all that, and then also implementing, or at least having sort of relation to the side quests to the main story. Like, first of all, Dr. Freeze is also important to the main story, but at least he still gets a side quest as well to save his wife, which is really cool in my opinion. So I think everything in here with Arkham City, obviously I can't really compare it to Arkham Knight because I mean it's the one that's the most improved, or at least the most recent one. So in my opinion, if I would have to say how well Batman Arkham City was from everything and how well they improved everything, I would honestly say it might be the best, at least the most well made. I forgot to mention as well, the Riddler things are very tedious in each game, and not just only Arkham Knight. They're very tedious, but I think in Arkham Knight it is way worse because of how big the map is. So that's why I'm not really gonna talk about the Riddler too much. I'm only gonna be talking about him in Arkham Knight and not in the other ones because I didn't really bother actually completing all the Riddler quests in here because I just didn't want to, especially with how long it took me to do the Arkham Knight ones. So feel free to let me know if you thought the Riddler was cool. But one thing I also want to mention, I kind of like Riddler as a character, and I kind of wish that it wasn't just that you have to collect all his trophies and then fight him or something like that. Anyways, moving on from that, if I had to say a ranking for Arkham City, in my opinion, I honestly think that this game, in my opinion, you could say if I'm wrong, it's fine. You can give your own reasons on why it's bad or why it's good. In my opinion, 9 out of 10, maybe 10 out of 10. I'll give it a 9 out of 10 max, or minimum at least. 10 out of 10 max, but that's being sort of generous in my opinion. Because this game was so good. I really did enjoy it so much. The side quests, Deadshot, Zaz, the main story, Joker, Dr. Freeze, Penguin, maybe even Two-Face being in there, sort of. Being able to play as Catwoman as well was kind of interesting as well. And just witnessing the death of Joker and how Joker actually fooled Batman into thinking that Joker already took the cure when it was actually just Clayface being Joker, which was kind of a good twist. I didn't actually expect that at all. So I think they did amazing with the whole story and what happened to Hugo Strange and everything. And I forgot to mention the identity thief and how he sort of transformed into Bruce Wayne, because I always wondered how was he related in the Arkham Knights, like how did he become a character? And then I played Arkham City and I'm like, holy shit, what the fuck, he did all this? So I think they did really well with everything. 9 out of 10. If I'll be generous, maybe 10 out of 10, but that's maybe being too generous, but still a fantastic game in my opinion, a fantastic game. Before we move on to Arkham Knight, there's one thing I also want to mention. The one thing that was definitely the most annoying thing in Arkham Asylum, and thankfully they started fixing later on in Arkham City and Arkham Knight, the most annoying thing that really annoyed me so much and was just terrible was the fact that anytime you used the detective mode and activated it, you would get flashbanged every fucking time. I'm not joking. I will show you an example right here that why it was so bad, especially if you were tired or were playing at night. And it was so bad. I don't know why they thought it was a good idea to do that. Every time you used it, right here, I'll show you an example. When it finishes the detective mode, it was so bad. And I'm so glad that they fixed this with Arkham City and Arkham Knight. Look at how annoying that is. A flash, a flash, a flash, a flash, a flash. And that would happen anytime you use the detective mode. So thank God for that, for them fixing that for Arkham City and Knight. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, we're moving on to the last game, and I have a lot to say for Arkham Knight. But overall, let's start off with, I guess, a banger. Sorry if that was cringy. Not really a popular thing anyone does anymore on YouTube, but I just kind of wanted to do it. Anyways, moving on to Arkham Knight. Now, there's a lot to say for this game because some people really do enjoy it and some people not really. Many of the times it could probably be because of the Batmobile mechanics. I understand that, but let's start off with the whole story. Now, the whole story is, of course, Batman trying to stop Scarecrow's plan of releasing his toxin on the whole city, on Gotham City, which leads one thing to another. Barbara getting captured, the Arkham Knight revealing himself, and having to fight a bunch of people to eventually try to save Barbara, and then also later on showing that she died, but then she didn't die somehow, and then Gordon not really trusting him or trusting Batman because it was revealed that Oracle worked for Batman. A lot of things needs to be broken down for the story, but overall, I like the story in some way. Don't get me wrong, it's not a terrible story. There might have been a few issues, and I kind of wish they had more, especially with the boss fights, because the boss fights weren't really that great. At least, not really as much. I don't even think there was a lot of boss fights to begin with in Arkham City, or sorry, Arkham Knights. One that's really just the most eye-catching is just the fight with Arkham Knight, which is both of them revealing that Arkham Knight is actually Jason Todd, and Jason Todd is trying to kill Batman for, I guess, ignoring him, and how he was captured and kidnapped, and Batman never tried to do anything, even though Batman really was sad and just completely filled with guilt for him dying, basically. So there's a lot to break down, but I will say I think the story is good, but I think the boss fights were kind of underwhelming in my opinion. There really wasn't anything eye-catching for any of the boss fights besides just the Arkham Knight. If I had to think, yeah, no, there really wasn't anything great or any big boss fights at all, which kind of sucks because Arkham Knight is like not really recent, but obviously the last game from the Arkham series, which is kind of a shame. I really wish they had more boss fights in this one, but there really wasn't any at all, which sucks. Maybe the one that was, I guess, important was the Killer Croc one, but that's sort of like a DLC thing, which is kind of a shame. Another one you could also point out is the Three Jokers, which had also a cool concept of Batman fearing even worse than what Scarecrow could ever do or the Arkham Knight, of three Jokers existing in Gotham City and trying to find the cure because he's also a Joker, or at least a Joker, a, a character in the process of becoming Joker, the Batman who laughs, which I feel like would have been really cool in my opinion to see something like the Batman who laughs. It was sort of revealed in something like that when it was showing Joker's fears, or at least when Joker would have taken over Batman. But it wasn't really showing. It was really just showing Joker himself, like as his character, just walking around and seeing the whole city just burned down. And I kind of wish it was the opposite of showing Batman doing that. And maybe that would have been character assassination. But I mean, the Batman who laughs is a really cool and just insane concept of Batman just giving in and Joker taking over his body and just becoming the strongest thing of all time. And another thing that I also want to see, or I see people pointing out, is there was too much Joker in this. Like, Joker was obviously too involved, or at least involved in literally every single Arkham game. And I understand that because he basically still was here, since he was basically a hallucination of Batman, because Batman's Joker's blood is corrupting him and almost trying to give in and making him give in into just Joker taking over his body. And I understand that. I kind of understand what they're going for, what people are going for with that. But the one that I definitely agree in some way is the Batman mechanics and the Batmobile mechanics. Sorry, and how clunky and just kind of annoying it was, especially of how mandatory using the Batmobile was. Many of the times in the story, you had to use the Batmobile. It was very important. So that meant that you needed to have a lot of upgrades for the Batmobile. You could say, no, you don't really. You'll be fine if you just don't upgrade anything, which is kind of stupid if you say that, because you'll be missing out on a lot of good things that really help you out, especially with decreasing the cooldown of every shot for the 60mm cannon, which is very important later on in the mission of like saving Oracle and stopping hundreds of tanks or something like that. So because of that, I understand why people didn't really like how mandatory the Batmobile was, and especially of how clunky the whole gameplay and mechanics were for the Batmobile. I understand that, especially when sometimes the robots can shoot you at the speed of sound, and sometimes they just shoot as slow as a fucking sloth for some reason. It was really weird sometimes how they just shot me so fast and they couldn't really react very fast. And then sometimes they were just slow as hell and I just one-shot at them, which is kind of weird. But with the Batmobile at times as well, it was very annoying, especially when you're trying to aim at something and you aimed at the thing and it just didn't aim correctly. I don't know, it's hard to explain, but it's better for you to just understand, or at least search up why people didn't really like the Batmobile, or at least why it was sort of a kind of a mess in some way and how I had a lot of problems, which I understand. Now, the side quests for the Arkham Knight was kind of interesting, and I feel like they should have added more. I think the ones that were the best was for sure the three or the four side quests that came with the DLC that you need to complete for 100%, or at least 240%, which was Ra's al Ghul, Mr. Freeze, Killer Croc, and Mad Hatter. Those were definitely, I think, the best side quests out of any of the other, or at least from any of the other side quests for the Arkham Knight. They definitely did really good with those, and they were actually unique in their own way, especially with Killer Croc, at least. A giant fucking crocodile trying to kill you. Sure, you could say it was kind of similar to the other ones, like maybe Albert or something like that, but at least he was kind of a challenge in some way. Albert was just kind of weak. And then the other side quests like Penguin and Two-Face, and maybe even like the checkpoints, the towers, and the bombs. The checkpoints and towers were basically the same thing. All you have to do is just knock out or just take out everyone that was protecting whatever it was. The person that had the control for the checkpoints, or take out the tower thing that had those turrets in those buildings. Pretty much similar, but sometimes they were kind of different with what they brought. Sometimes it was just regular people. Sometimes they had like a lieutenant, like a big guy. Sometimes they had all weapons. Sometimes they had drones. Sometimes they had sentry turrets. Sometimes it was like placed giant turrets, like, you know, the big robot turrets in one area. And one of them, which was the dumbest one of all time too, was one where it was just full of sentry turrets, I think, and just one guy, which was so fucking stupid that they had that as one of like the checkpoints, I think. And then, not to mention the Riddler side quests, which was kind of bizarre in my opinion. I don't understand why the Riddler was making racetracks to sort of beat Batman. Don't get me wrong, they were kind of cool at least. They were kind of fun in some way. The trials that he had with the Batmobile, the other ones, not the racetracks, were kind of forgettable. They weren't really that interesting. I mean, that's just to get it over with. And then also bringing Catwoman, because Catwoman was also captured from the Riddler, which is cool, at least having a reason to actually even stop the Riddler. But then you don't even really fight the Riddler again. All you have to do is you still have to collect all of his trophies, which is around 243 riddles, not just trophies, riddles. And not just riddles overall, also trying to find specific thugs that have a thing implanted in their brain or something, and trying to find out who it is to knock them out and take or destroy that device so they don't explode. And then just destroying these random objects that are on the map. It was so weird. I understand why people didn't want to 100% the game, especially because of the riddle, or the Riddler. Because having to collect all of those trophies, do all those riddles, destroy these random objects, and then stop these guys from exploding was so weird. And not to mention, because of how big the map is. The map is massive. The meme is massive. I'm not joking. It's fucking huge. And because of that, the riddles are literally everywhere. from Miyagani Island to Founders Island to the fucking stag founders or whatever, the stag blimps basically, which in my opinion I kind of hated the stag part. Like, I hated having to maneuver around the blimp because it was so annoying at times, and especially when you have to go back over there to the stag blimps to collect those Riddler trophies, which was the most annoying thing. Don't get me wrong, I feel like it was interesting to know what the fuck Stag did with like the cloudburst and everything, what he did and how evil he is. But I just hated the blimp overall. I hated maneuvering around the whole place. The one thing that I also did like with Arkham Knight, I did really like the NPC dialogues, and also the things that the neat little Easter eggs that you can do. Not really Easter eggs, but neat little things that you could do to fuck around. One example is if one of the enemies in a specific location, like a mission or even like a checkpoint or tower, if they have the device where they can track you when you're using your detective mode, if you go right behind them and make sure no one's around you, if you go right behind them and it fully scans you, there's a funny ass dialogue of them saying, "This doesn't make sense. He's right behind me," and it's so fucking goofy. I'll show you an example right here.
Signal's back. I've got a lock. He's right behind me.
It's little details like that that always get me so many times in Arkham Knight. And don't get me wrong, this also happens a lot with Arkham City and Arkham Asylum, but I just love the way that they did many little small details in this one. And one more thing I also want to point out that I remember playing, and it's just something that I saw that I just experienced when I was playing the DLCs. One thing that was so funny is I always loved the concept of saying Batman does never or never kills ever. But at this point, he might as well should because of how brutal he can be with fighting people. I am not joking. Look at this poor soul that I already knocked out, but Batman wanted to make an extra move on him. I'm not joking. Look at this move from Batman right here. Anyways, moving on from that, I also want to talk about Scarecrow and how he's not really a bunch like much of a wimp as he was before now. Don't get me wrong, in Asylum he was pretty creepy, especially with the whole boss of how big he was back in the nightmares. But in here he definitely sounded a lot more serious and I guess you could say sort of matured more than before. And his whole plan kind of worked out, or at least actually happened, even though Batman was able to stop his whole cloudburst thing. But the whole reveal of what the cloudburst did, especially with what happened and his whole fear gas going into the whole city, was fucking insane. It was so crazy. I'm not joking. I'm gonna show you a clip right here of how crazy and just how fast the tear gas, or sorry, the fear gas spread around the city.
Welcome to Gotham, the city of fear.
Alright, sorry about going off on these tangents. Now I also need to talk about like the movements, maybe the graphics, and also the combat. Now the combat is pretty much similar to Arkham City. I think it's sort of improved, I guess, but not too much. It's still good. I still really like the combat. They did add a lot of upgrades, like a lot of upgrades for combat, maybe gadgets. The gadgets are cool, I guess. Like the upgrades for the gadgets are cool. I understand that. But some of them for like the combat, or like specifically like, yeah, just for the combat, some of them are kind of useless. You never really actually will use the combats that you upgrade. So some of them can be useless, but some of them can be useful and actually can be really cool. A few examples, I guess, are like when you're going to do the glide kick, there's a cool thing that you can do is when you're doing the glide kick and you're far enough, you hold R2 and you'll see a Batman signal like going from yellow to red, and if it reaches red, the max, it can fully knock out that person and also do a shockwave around enemies there. So that can be pretty useful, and also increasing how good the grapnel boost is can be very good as well. And obviously other things like making your armor and with bullets, and also combat is good. It's the same thing with the other games. So the combat is still the same, but I think better as well. Not a huge change, but it's still pretty good as well. They definitely improved at least a good amount. Now the movement, oof, they definitely made it a lot better because holy shit, if it was still something like Arkham City, at least with the upgrades, that they finally fixed it. If they still had the same thing with Arkham City and how kind of slow it is, it definitely would have been such a pain, and we probably would have to rely on the Batmobile even more now. Because sure, the Batmobile is good for moving around, but you still need to get up to buildings and all that. But if it was still like Arkham Asylum or Arkham City, it definitely would have been such a pain and definitely would have been a huge flaw with Arkham Knight. But thank God that's not a huge flaw in here anymore. And thank God they added those upgrades for the grapple boost to make you go even farther and go higher up in the sky, whatever is needed. Now, the last thing that I think we all can agree are the graphics. The graphics are amazing. They did amazing with improving everything with the graphics. It's so good because of how big the map is, the whole environment, obviously, with how it's night the entire time, of how it's raining, the water, everything is amazing. They did well with improving the graphics so much. In fact, I think the graphics are definitely the biggest improvements out of any other improvement that they made, like from Arkham Asylum to Arkham City, or like the combat or something like that. They did amazing with improving the graphics, and it's crazy to me that this game released in 2015 and it still looks amazing to this day. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that like a PS4 or whatever console it was available during that time is like some shitty little system that can hardly handle, I don't know, like Fortnite or something. It's still good, but it's just, surprising. Sometimes there's those games where you wouldn't really expect a game like, or a console like a PS4, especially because of how old it was, even though like it released like in 2014. It's still crazy to me, in my opinion. It's still crazy. Sorry if I keep going off on a tangent and keep repeating myself, but it's amazing. They really did amazing with improving the graphics of everything and just made the fucking city even more beautiful. It was amazing. So that I will give them a lot of credit for. Now, as I said before with the story, like I like the story still, and that might be biased for me to say that because I just kind of like it. But I honestly would say I prefer the combat more here than in Arkham City, but it's not like a huge difference, like a huge gap of how much I like it. It's still really fun. One that I also want to mention is the fact that you can also do fear takedowns. Now, fear takedowns, if you saw from that small little, like, cool little montage, fear takedowns are a really cool thing that they added now, where it can go up to 5 people. So if you're ever in like a grate, like in one of the vents, or you're sort of close up in the like a rail above someone, and there's at least like two, three, 4 people, if you get it perfectly and there's a bunch of people around, you can actually do a fear takedown, which can make you knock out one person, then go to another, then go to another, then go to another. So you can knock out up to 5 people, which I think was definitely good because I mean you might say that it just made it too easy, but I think it was good because it was really annoying having to wait for like a thug or like some enemy to sort of go away from some other enemies because sometimes they can bunch up together and sometimes they walk away from other people, so that way then you can knock those people out. And then when there's quite a few that are already knocked out, sometimes there will be two huddling up together, one watching one side and one watching the other one, which can be kind of annoying to, I guess, try and knock them all out. So I think that was a really cool thing that they added. It really was cool. I guess that all I really could say. Sorry, it was really cool, and I think it was a good idea that they did. You might say, you might have some criticism on that. So feel free to let me know what your criticisms are for something like that. But I think, in my opinion, it was really cool for a thing that they did. Like something like that, like a fear takedowns. I wouldn't really expect a game like that or like this to do something like that, especially because, I mean, it's Batman. It's not like he's a mutant, like a super mutant that has incredible powers. He's just a human that can do something like this, surprisingly. So, with something like that, they did really good with that. Some side quests that I guess I like. Mm, I guess the Man Bat, the whole story with Man Bat was interesting as well. Of how he tried to make a cure by using like bat DNA to maybe try to solve deafness and blindness, which is a cool thing. And then, unfortunately, that corrupted his whole body, and then became a Man Bat and ended up killing his wife because of it, which was pretty sad. And the way that Poison Ivy sacrificed herself for Gotham because of Scarecrow's toxin was kind of sad, but at least she sort of redeemed herself. I mean, she's done a lot of shitty things, but I wouldn't say she's the perfect character because she risked herself or risked her life for Gotham, but still a very noble thing for her to do. So I'll give her that. It was kind of sad for her to just fade away, literally like fade away, like in any or Infinity War, like Avengers, just all of them fading away and just becoming just dust. That's all it was. So it was really cool that they did something like that. Kind of sad, but cool. And then other things like I said, Two-Face and Penguin. I mean, they were just the same thing as like regular Batman gameplay. Obviously, Penguin just fighting a bunch of enemies, and then Two-Face just doing Vantage Point takeouts, which cool, I guess, but it wasn't really a cool boss fight because eventually when you do fight Two-Face, he's just another enemy and you just knock him out. That's it, which is kind of underwhelming. I kind of wish they did more for that. Sure, you could also say that they did the same thing with what was it in Arkham City with Catwoman, but at least with Catwoman, it was sort of a difficult thing to do because she had a whole different mechanic. She wasn't like Batman that could just do anything she wanted. You had to be very careful with what you had to do to take out Two-Face. And it was multiple times that you had to take him out or hit him. Now, as I said before with the Arkham Knight, so the whole boss fight, or at least the first one with Arkham Knight, was he's basically in a giant tank, or sort of, the name is the Cloudburst, but it's a tank inside. Basically, the tank is producing all of this gas, and it has multiple different power cores or something like that, and you have to hit the tank in different directions or in different sides: the front, the back, the left, and the right. And sometimes I like it whenever I hear Batman talking to himself and what he's thinking and what his mindset is, like how can he face this, or like how can he prevent or sort of go against something like this, what can he do to fight off something gigantic as this. So this boss fight wasn't really bad. It wasn't really a bad thing, but I just kind of wish it was sort of more because, like he said in this scene, the only thing that you could really do, the only way that you can defeat him is strike and then run away, and maybe hopefully have him overcharge, use like overheat the fucking Cloudburst, which is cool and all. I remember the first time I did this, I was terrified because the way he was locking onto me and launching those weird fucking weapons was crazy to me. But now that I'm more experienced and have I played this a lot more, I know what I'm doing. Honestly, he's not really a hard boss to fight. Maybe as long as you just get the front part, you're done. Everything else will be very easy. So that's kind of underwhelming, but sometimes I do like it whenever they actually have like soundtrack or something like that, a soundtrack of a serious part when it can be very tense, especially with like the Cobra fights. The Cobra tanks are obviously gigantic, and if they find you and detect you, they can one-shot you, or maybe not really one-shot you, but they can hit you or kill you in like 2 or 3 shots, which is scary, and sometimes you need to make sure to find a proper way to take them out and catch them off guard, which in my opinion was cool and actually gave the feeling of, oh shit, I gotta focus. I really need to focus. I can't let him hit me. Like, for example, right here, just listen to the audio when I'm taking out the Cobra tanks and obviously going against the Cloudburst or the Arkham Knight.
You can't hide forever. Cobra tank down. Holding formation. It's over, Batman. Gotham's dead. Drone offline. I will find you.
The explosion disabled the main cannon. Now I can get close and concentrate fire on the Cloudburst.
I think what made this sort of gameplay part more kind of tense for me, not really scary, but sort of tense for me, is obviously the environment around you, of you literally being inside of the Cloudburst, the whole fear gas. You're literally right in the middle of it, giving the creepy environment of fear, and also just seeing the Jokers around you, of Batman's fear becoming Joker. And not to mention Batman closing off the gates, so the only way to get out of there is to take out all those Cobra tanks, the 7 Cobra tanks, and facing Arkham Knight head on after. So they did really well with this scene, but I think what's just sort of sad for me is they did the same thing with Deathstroke, which I think, in my opinion, Deathstroke is a really cool character. I like his whole design. He could have been a cool, like, badass fight, in my opinion, because he's a whole assassin that would have been fun to fight off, but all they did for Deathstroke is the same thing that they did with Arkham Knight, where just fight a bunch of Cobra tanks and then eventually fight Deathstroke's tank, which wasn't actually like fighting or hitting specific parts of the tank. It was just a regular fight, like a regular head-on fight. Blast your cannons, blast some missiles at him, shoot off the missiles that he's shooting at you, and then after that, when his tank is destroyed, he tries to push to you head-on, and Batman just knocks him out, which is kind of a shame. I really wish there was more for Deathstroke, and not just an immediate death like or fail like that. That's it. That's all his story was. Like, you finish all the checkpoints, you finish all the bombs, you finish all the towers, you face him with the Cobra tanks, you destroy his tank. He tries to rush to you, fails, gets knocked out, you take him to jail. That's it. I wish there was more for Deathstroke. That's why I will say the DLC with Killer Croc, with Ra's al Ghul, with Dr. Freeze, and Mad Hatter was definitely a lot more creative and more well made, because at least each of those were unique. Killer Croc, that was a head-on fight with Nightwing. Ra's al Ghul, it was the whole thing of having a decision of resurrecting Ra's al Ghul or not. Either having him basically die because he won't get the serum or whatever he needs to get resurrected, or in the end he basically dies, or save him and have his other daughter that still alive, the other daughter of Ra's al Ghul, she ends up dying in the end, which is a choice, in my opinion. Is not really a hard choice. Just kill Ra's al Ghul. He's a piece of shit. So it's something like that. And then Mad Hatter as well, having to find the 4 officers, I think, in different trunks or something like that, and then eventually Batman falling into his trap and trying to get Batman get corrupted with the hat and maybe try to get him to go insane. So that's why I think those were definitely the best DLCs, at least compared to other side quests, because the other side quests were not really that great. It sort of felt the same as a usual Batman gameplay. But overall, if I had to sum up everything with Batman Arkham Knight, I will say I think this is the most fun I've had, because it's the one that I like to play the most, because there's a lot of things that you could do here. You're not limited on what you could do. You can go anywhere. It's a huge map. There's a lot of things to do. Take out checkpoints, towers, which I just like doing because I just like fighting all these people. There's a lot of things that you could do. So that's why I always enjoy Arkham Knight so much, and I might be biased about this. One thing that I also want to mention as well is, like I said before, with Riddler being very tedious and very annoying in this one, at least with like having to find everything and all his trophies, the one thing that's very satisfying for me is witnessing or having the Riddler actually getting really mad at you for succeeding. One example is especially with the last racetrack, where he actually gets mad at you for surviving the loop, which is so funny to me and just makes it satisfying to know that we will always be better than the Riddler, which is so funny and a very good thing. Whoever the voice actor was, they did amazing with the Riddler. I'll show you an example right here.
Farewell, Dark Knight. No! This isn't right. This isn't possible. This isn't happening. I am the Riddler, and you do not defeat me! Goodbye. Stop not dying! The key. Now you collect the key. Those are the rules, and I have to follow the rules, don't I? I set them after all.
Anyways, to conclude the Arkham Knight section, all I want to say is I really did enjoy the Arkham Knight a lot, and there's also its fair share of problems as well. Things with the Batmobile, things with the Riddler side quests. I understand. Feel free to let me know what problems you have for each of these. If you have any problems for Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, Arkham Knight, I'm always free to hear opinions because obviously we're not perfect. People have different reasons on liking things and not liking things. So in my opinion, if I had to give a rating for Arkham Knight, I will definitely say I think is fair is max 9 out of 10, minimum 8 out of 10. That might be low, but I think 9 out of 10 is sort of fair. There's a lot of problems or a few problems with Arkham Knight, so it's not perfect. But 9 or 8 out of 10 I think is decent enough. I don't think it's an average game. I think it's an above average and well done thing. There's a few problems, but there's a lot of good things with this game. I genuinely enjoyed it and love going back to this game. And one thing that also makes it not be 100% or 10 out of 10 is the fact that when you get 240% and you finally get the gold suit, you can't use it at all. The only time you can use it, not even in AR challenges, I think, the only time you'll even be able to use it, even if you finish the game already, is just gliding around the map. That's all you can do. You can't even use it to restart the game or like New Game Plus or something like that, and just use it and look badass as fuck knowing that you completed it 240%, which sucks so much. All that hard work just for you to be able to glide around with it. That sucks. And I think this is a problem with many other games as well, not just Batman. But I'm just saying, it sucks to know that I wasted all that time and so much time having to repeat the same thing over and over just for me to be able to get a badass suit that I can't even use at all besides just gliding around, which just sucks. Anyways, that's a tangent, but yeah, 8 out of 10, maybe 9 out of 10 if I'm being generous, I think is a fair share or a fair rating for it. So yeah, 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10. To conclude this video, all I have to say is I love the Arkham series so much. Even if there's a lot of flaws with like the first or maybe third one, I love it so much to death. I really do. I always love going back to this game and just experience everything again and know how to play the game and actually beat the game well. So to conclude this, all I want to say is thank you to anyone that worked on this game. Even if I've said a lot of problems with it, I still genuinely enjoyed and appreciate all the hard work went to make this game or these games. It was amazing. It was such an amazing experience, honestly. It was so fun being able to play Batman and the many things that you're able to do with Batman. His many gadgets, the combat, the creative ideas with all these villains into a video game from the comics is amazing. I genuinely enjoyed it so much, and I only wish that we were able to get more. And maybe we could have had, a cool game of where Batman did pass away and it was just the other ones like Red Hood or Nightwing or Tim Drake. Oh wait, there was one, but it was complete garbage. Oh well. Yeah, Gotham Knights was garbage from what I've heard. I haven't played it, but I've heard that it's kind of garbage, which is such a shame. I wish that they brought more, but at least we were able to play the DLCs, which was more of Nightwing, more of Robin, more with actual Batgirl, I think Harley Quinn, and even Red Hood, which Red Hood was cool. I think I love Red Hood as a character. Just sort of still having the same idea with Batman, but just not giving a fuck anymore of, oh, I don't kill. He kills, but he kills criminals. So all I have to say is thank you for watching this video. I know it's a very long video. Sorry about that. But I had a lot to say. I really did. I love these games to death. I love it so much. Please let me know what you think about it. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you like it? Do you hate it? What problems did you have while playing the Arkham series? Because I know I had a lot of problems, but it was still a lot of fun for me. Anyways, that's all we have to say. I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you guys next time. See ya.